This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. It's great to have you with us today. So we're doing a program called Creating a Resume with Google Docs, and I am Kelli Fountain. I'm one of the technology programming people here at Trails Regional Library in Warrensburg. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I've also got Sarah with me today, Sarah Evans. She's above me, in charge of all the programs for all the branches and a lot of other duties to deal with marketing and just all sorts of incredible stuff. So we're going to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through a series of slides, probably about 7 slides, talking about how to start a resume with Google using a Google Doc and how to get to that from your Google Drive. And then after I go through those slides, we will go through that process. So we will do some slides, then I'll demo, then we'll go through some more slides, and then I'll demo again. So the first thing you're going to want to do is log into your Google account. So to use Google Drive and Google Docs, you will have to have a Google account. So if you have a Gmail account, you will be able to access this through your Gmail. And if not, then you'll need to go into Google Chrome and set one up. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to sign into your account. So if you just go to google.com, you can sign in. And if you don't have an account, you'll go through a series of screens like this one. And the first thing it will ask is for what you want your email address to be, your username, and if that's available, it will let you know. It'll ask for your password. They usually always ask for a cell phone number, and then they will send a Google verification code to your cell phone, and then you will enter that code, and then it goes ahead with the setup and gives you a Gmail account. So once you're logged into your Gmail, you're going to want to go to this thing in your upper right-hand corner. So this is the Expand Apps icon. It looks like a bunch of little squares in a grid. If you click on that, then it will open up apps. And within there, also, it opens up some other features, Google Maps, Google Play, Google News, and it will also open up what is called Google Drive. And what Google Drive is it's a space on the cloud where Google will store all your Google documents. So it will store a variety of different file formats. It will store pictures there. It will store, like I said, Word documents. It will store spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are in a program called Sheets. It will save power presentations as slides. So you have a whole variety of things that you can access through your Google Drive. Once you get into Google Drive, you're going to want to click and hold down this new button. And that will expand and bring up this pop-up drop-down menu. And then you'll want to go to Google Docs, and you want to click on this arrow, this little chevron looking arrow, and hold that down. Once you do that, you'll get this pop-out menu, and you'll want to go down to From a Template and click on that. Once you've done that, you will see a whole bunch of different resume templates. There are actually 6. This is a screenshot of 5 of them, but there are actually 6 in Google Docs that you can choose from. They're named kind of after different aspects of the different templates. Like this one's named Coral because it's using this coral orange color. This one's named Spearmint because it can use a spearmint. This one's supposed to be more modern. This one uses a serif font. So you can double click on them to open them, and then you can start typing on that template, or you can just look through them by opening them and seeing a larger version of them. Okay, so from here, I'm gonna go ahead and escape out of the PowerPoint, and we're gonna go through those initial steps. So I'm going to go into, I already have my email up. I'm going to go into my Google Apps icon, and then I'm going to click on Drive. And then I'm going to wait for Drive to load. And we've been reconfiguring our wireless internet, so sometimes my internet is a little slow here because of that. So once this screen loads, I'll have actually previews up here of documents that I've recently opened that'll show there, and you can see I've got a set of file folders. Okay, now this screen has completed loading. I can click on the new button, and then I can go down to Google Docs, and I actually clicked on it rather than holding it down. I'm going to go back. I didn't need to quite do it like that. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, and then I'm going to click on this part, or hold over it, hover over it, and then when I go to From Template, I'm going to click on that. So what you saw before is when I went straight down to Google Docs, it went ahead and just opened a blank Google Doc because I clicked into it. So this is the template gallery. We're under the general tab. You can set up templates and share them within your group. That's kind of what you're seeing there. So I can use this scroll bar to scroll down, and there's a bunch of resumes in here. All right. So I'm just gonna click on the first resume and go ahead and actually double click on it to open it.
Kelly, you might close some of those tabs. That might help your connection after you've, like the Gmail and Drive tabs. If you're okay with that. I'm not sure if you're planning to use them
I
later.
think I can close that, but I guess I don't need the drive open to be in here. I don't know what this is. My controls are getting in my way. Okay. All right, so once you're in here and it finishes loading, the first thing we're going to do is click up here. This is actually where you name the document. So now you can see it looks like a box. I'm just going to click in front of resume. You can save it however you want. You can either write like your name and resume and the date, or you could start with resume. Actually, I think I'm going to start with resume, and then I'm going to put my name. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter today's date. The reason I do that is it just helps me. I am always adapting my resume if I'm applying for different jobs, and I want the most recent one, but I also want to keep archived ones. You don't necessarily have to do this in Google. If you learn a lot about Google Docs, it has a history panel, and you can always go back to an earlier version of a document. But I just think it's a nice feature to go ahead and name your resume with the date. And then the first thing you're going to want to do is work on this contact information area at the top. So we're going to want to kind of come in here and click and add our first name and our last name. I don't know if any of you are doing this with me, but if you are, let me know if I need to go slower or anything. When you get over here, it's kind of restating your name. I'm going to go ahead and do that again. But one thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to use this address feature. and I'll tell you why. So I think in this kind of modern age, people are less likely to need their address on a resume. It's kind of gone out of style. Wouldn't you agree, Sarah? It's kind of gone out of phase to
Yeah.
use your address. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to leave that off. Now, the one situation in where I might want to leave my address is if I want to show that I live really close to a job, especially a job where you might have long hours and access might be a problem. You know, that might be one situation. Can anybody else think of a situation where you might want to have your address on your resume?
I think that's a really good point. That if you're trying to highlight something like your location to the potential employer, you'd like to leave that on.
Mhm.
Or if if you later also write a cover letter that explains that you're maybe moving from one place to another, it might be okay to leave that on. But I
Mhm.
know that with a lot of employers now, um, the address is not as important. If you're applying for the job, they want to see a very brief summary. They don't need a lot of information, and sometimes that could even open the door for discrimination. They might look over your email, or I'm sorry, your resume, because they see, oh, they live far away. I wonder what the deal is. It's just
Right.
not really relevant information. They want to see your skills. They want to see your experience. And so it's becoming more and more normal for employee or potential employees to omit that kind of information and really just highlight their skills.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Sarah. So we're gonna just delete this section. I think a lot of people all have cell phones anymore and don't have home phones. I guess you could put both, but really I think all people need is your cell. Um, whatever phone number works best for you, but if you were to put both, I would definitely go ahead and somehow let people know that one's a cell phone or a mobile phone and one's a home phone. I know in different states, it's probably not so much like that here, but where I live out in the country, my cell phone doesn't come in at my house very well, especially in the summer when all the trees have leafed out. So um, in that case, I would want to give both numbers, and that would be a speaking point, or it might be something I might include in the email if someone were going to try to contact me or follow up with me. I know when I was in Northern California, cell phones didn't work at all. So really kind of depends on the part of the country. Um, and then you want to include an email address where you can be reached at. And usually it would be your personal one. I just put mine that here at work. So, all right, so that gets us through our contact information block. Let's go back to the PowerPoint now and go through some more slides. So the next thing we're going to focus on is describing your work experience. So once you list your jobs, and we'll talk about the format for that, you're going to want to describe your responsibilities, skills, and achievements. These are all the things that are on the rest of the resume, actually. And then you're going to explain it for each job on your resume. So you'll want to fill in work, any volunteer experience, or other relevant experience. I've had students that were either in high school or in college that haven't had a lot of work experience come to some of my resume writing classes. And so in those situations, their volunteer experience and the kind of projects they manage within those volunteer experiences become their primary work experience. So you want to put your most recent at the top, but you also want to think about those things that kind of set you apart and show that you can either deal with projects, deal with people, you have good customer service, good computer and technology skills. You want to make sure that you highlight things in the best way possible based on where you are in your experience in life. So if you've had a lot of jobs, it's easy to kind of delineate that work experience, but sometimes it can be more challenging for a young adult who's writing a resume for the first time to try to get a scholarship or something like that. So for your job experience, you're going to want to include your company or organization name and the location, your role, and the dates you worked there. So like if it was a volunteer opportunity, say you volunteered at the Y or something like that, that would be the organization name. Your role there might be volunteer, or you might be working with children's programs. So that stuff can substitute in as work experience. And then you want to make sure you have your most recent work experience at the top, and then you work backwards chronologically. So we're going to talk some more about some do's and don'ts that deal with these sections we've been looking at. We've already talked about making your name and contact information prominent on the page. And if you notice, the templates all have them up at the top, either centered or upper left, and then bolded in a different font. We've talked about why not to include your mailing address. And so I think that's a good point. When we talk about under do's, I'm kind of going to go back and forth some projects to include or statistical data from jobs. That would be like if you work in a store, maybe sales profits increased by 40%, or you passed your audit, you know, different things, the store customer service resume or customer service surveys are having a positive impact. Those sort of things, anything that deals with an assessment or response from the public is a really good thing to include as statistical data. So you'll want to, when you have these jobs, you know, think about how you can be using that information that's available to benefit you in the future, and kind of highlight that information on your resume. You'll want to collect that kind of information on your job, if that makes sense. So another thing you want to do when you're putting down your information on here is you want to try to get multiple duties on the same line. So a lot of times, like I've done bookkeeping and account management or budget management, you know, at the university, I did that. So those were kind of two different things, or managed accounts payables. They're very similar, related jobs, but they're a little bit different. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about there. Include awards and other recognitions. So if you're in an honor society or honor group, or you're employee of the month, or, you know, just anything like that is another thing to include, either in another section called awards and recognitions. You could highlight that maybe as a bullet point under one of your work experience things. So keep those sort of things in mind. And then highlighting promotions within a job. So a lot of times when you work at a job, your job will change, you'll take on new duties. Maybe you'll be lucky enough to get your job re-evaluated. They'll give you a new title. So all those sort of things need to be delineated on your resume. You'll still have the same, maybe there's not a break in employment, right? Because you're still working for the same company. They'll see that, that'll be part of your speaking point. But as your duties increase and your title change, you'll want to reflect that on your resume. So a lot of times when you fill out applications that go with your resume, they'll ask you like, why did you leave this position? You know, and then they will get the answer, you know, I was promoted, you know. So that's the sort of thing that you also you want to let them know that on your resume. So I talked a little bit about we talked a lot, I'm sorry, about don't include your mailing address, putting months on your job dates. So this one's fairly new to me to consider. I used to think it was really important for you to have your months on your job date, so that people could, you know, you don't want to show a break in employment. People don't like to see a break in employment. So by putting the months down, you know, it becomes obvious if there's a gap or not. But in this day and age, most people do background checks on potential employees before they hire them. So they're going to see the exact dates of your employment anyway. that was one of the things that for me, it's always hard to remember when was the exact date I started here? What month exactly did I start here at this job, you know, especially if it's 15 years down the road. So it's not as necessary as it has been in the past. So it's another thing that's kind of going out of style. Wouldn't you agree on that, Sarah?
Yeah, at a recent seminar I went to for libraries, specifically helping folks with these kinds of things, they surveyed employers, and the most important thing, as I kind of mentioned before, is they don't want, you know, the minutia, all the details of that kind of thing. It does open the door for, you know, potential. It's something you don't want the potential employer to focus on, the months per se. You really want to highlight your skills in this resume. You want this to be something that if they look over for, you know, even less than a minute, they see your strong points. They're not focused on those things. And as Kelly said, it's information that they can find out later. You know, maybe even in the interview, you can talk and speak to those things. But it really is changing from as much detail as it once was, to employers getting stacks and stacks and thousands of online applications. You want to really put your best foot forward and take out a lot of that more relevant information from your resume.
Great. So I totally agree. And in keeping with the spirit of taking out information, one thing we also don't want to do is continue sentences over multiple lines. So we kind of want to start with action sentences, you know, like supervised 12 employees. That's that bullet point. So then you would go on to the next one. So keep things short, simple, to the point. If you do kind of write like that, then actually, I think a lot of times when you look at a resume, your experience kind of jumps off the page. You know, if you can keep your template short in your resume and your speaking points or your bullet points real short and succinct, and start them with action words, you know, manage 12 executive accounts. You know, if you can keep things to the point, then I think that people at a glance will read it and comprehend it very easily. And I think that's what needs to happen. People will get a pile of 100 applications and thumb through them, and a lot of times they're all written very similarly, but what makes them stick out sometimes is just how well the message comes off the page. Would you agree with that, Sarah?
I would. I think that's exactly right.
Okay. All right. So another thing you don't have to include are the dates of degrees. I can kind of, I thought about this because, you know, in the past I've always thought, oh, they want to know your degree dates, you know, or when you got your degree. But I think that we might have a tendency to date people. You know, it was this long ago that I, you know, got my teaching degree, or I got, you know, my bachelor's of science degree or something like that. So I think that's another thing that we can leave off of our resumes in the future.
Mm-hmm. It could also open the door. Oh, sorry. It could also open the door again to discrimination. You don't want any kind of you don't want to give employers the opportunity to discriminate based on age. You want to show that you did earn the degree. That's what matters. That you've kept up your skills by adding that experience to your experience sections. You don't want to give them any kind of fodder to disregard your application. You know, let them see what you can do and interview you and get your foot in the door so you can really show them what you want to do. I think that's kind of the point of your resume, is to get your name noticed, interest sparked, and then your interviews where, you know, you really show them what you have. And I'm sure we'll talk about job interviews in another presentation another time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. So let's move to the next slide. So our experience, kind of the standard layout would be to have your job title, your company name, and then show your years. and then your city and state, and then the bulleted list of duties and achievements underneath that. Things to note is that you're going to want to have between 3 to 5 bullet points for each job. So try to come up with 3 to 5 things that are specific to that job that show your skills, that you can list and talk about. Multiple duties can be listed on the same line. We already talked about that. We don't want to continue over. We don't want to have like a big run-on sentence where it goes to the next line describing just one type of work. And then, like we said already, you don't need to have your start or end months for a particular job. When you add your education, it's important that you go ahead and get this on your draft resume. And then the standard layout for that would be your degree, your school name, your city and state, and then you could list your minor, any awards or recognitions. Awards and recognitions can also be a separate section in your resume, but you can also, you know, if you graduated with honors, you can mention it quickly there. So there's examples here on the right side. So we have high school diploma, Francis Howe High School, St. Peters, Missouri. And then we have Bachelor of Arts English, University of Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. So as we also talked about years, you don't want to include that graduation year, and you don't need to include your GPA. I know that I was really proud of my master's GPA. It was really hard to get that 4.0, so I sometimes include that, and that's probably a little bit, what's that word, self-inflating. So what do you think about the idea of having your GPA in there, Sarah?
I think it kind of harkens back to the, if it's not good, you know, is it not included because it's not good, or, you know, like I don't think it matters as much. I think more brief is more important, but maybe showing I think more substantial awards, like if you're summa cum laude, that would be something that you would add on there. Which I think
go in front of your degree name, right? I mean, that's how I've seen it, summa cum laude, that, you know, master's science.
I think so, but something like that would be better than, you know, 4.0, 3.8, something like that. Showing that distinction is better, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're maybe, the one exception I could maybe think of is if you're applying, if you're like a high school student and you're trying to apply for a scholarship, then of course that would be something to include with a list of honors and honors, you know, projects or groups that you belong to. So
especially if you don't have your diploma yet.
What?
If you don't have your diploma yet, that might be an extra detail.
Yeah. So there are some exceptions to kind of think about on some of these things. But we were kind of talking basically about broad trends, and I think these standards that we've talked about are good to keep in mind. But then also, you know, use your intuition and think about what the exceptions might be, and if there's an exception that you feel works for you, for why you might need to include some additional information. So some additional sections that sometimes appear on resume. I've seen these where they have professional summaries at the top. I have one on my resume, so I will have one that says something like 20 years experience in higher education, 15 years experience in graphic design industries, you know, 10 years experience in management. So I may have something like that. It kind of brings certain skill sets together and is kind of in a paragraph form before someone reads my whole resume. Another thing, I really don't talk about this on here, but a goal statement is a good thing to have too sometimes. So goal statement at the top, the goal is usually, you know, the goal is usually something like to improve, let's see, how would I put this? to improve company proficiency by, you know, being a new network technician or something like that. You know, you would want to somehow tailor your goal statement towards the exact position that you're applying for, but it's really not necessary because you are going to do that kind of talk about that in your cover letter. So would you agree with that, Sarah, that you don't necessarily have to have a goal statement, but if your cover letter somehow gets separated from your resume, maybe that's a good thing? What do you think?
I think so. I think what you said about tailoring your resume is really important. So it depends on the job you're applying to, the employer, the size of the employer. If you want it to really stand out, I think having both would be good. But it also depends on what your experience is for the job. If you're changing fields, a goal statement might be really important because someone needs to understand where you're coming from and your motivations for changing the field and what you have to offer for that career switch. So it does depend on your goals. So you really need to think about how you can put your best foot forward for whichever position you're applying for.
I really agree with what Sarah just said. And in one of my resume, and I think she came to some of my job search classes too, I had a lady who was totally switching job tracks. So she'd been a pastry chef at one of the elite hotels in Kansas City, and she actually managed the kitchen there, but she wanted to go into clerical work. And she had relocated from the city out here to Warrensburg, and there's, you know, no high dollar hotels out here where you would need a pastry chef. So, and she wanted to go into, like, you know, doing more office work and computer work. And she had managerial skills because of managing the kitchen, managing the people. And so it was necessary to write a really good statement and promote those managerial skills, and to also say that she, you know, was shifting into a different job sector. You know, she was going to try to do that. And so that's why that summary statement, that goal statement in that particular instance, she did become employed within a month after taking my class and redoing her resume. And I was really happy to hear about that. So those are some things to keep in mind, is that you can totally switch tracks, and that, you know, just you need to put that forward in your resume and your cover letter so people know that's where you're tending to do, and then you can explain why, you know, in your interview. So another additional section is a technology skills or tools section. You will deal with any apps or software that you know. So this has become a really lengthy section for my personal resume. Microsoft Office programs are so, skills are so in demand. So if you, I would list like Microsoft, sometimes I'll like list the software package like Microsoft Office, and then I'll put a colon and I'll put, you know, Word, Excel, you know, what's another one? PowerPoint. I want to say Photo Manager, but I think it's Publisher. That's what it is, Publisher. I did the Adobe Creative Suite. I have skills in those, so I would list those off. If you know any programming languages, so you know some HTML or XHTML or cascading style sheets, CSS, Java, any of that kind of thing, that would be something to list. Say your technology is running a cash register. It's important to know that you can do that. You know, I know that I learned to run a computer before I learned to run a cash register. So it was one of those skills I had to kind of retroactively do when I later became a store manager. You know, I was not used to that. So any of that kind of stuff is important to list on there. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Phone skills are important. You know, typing skills are important. So all of that stuff is important. So try to kind of break down what you can kind of lump into that section and figure out a way to kind of prioritize and sort that section. Like start off with kind of similar to what I did in my explanation to you. So the main office programs are what most industry or businesses use. I would probably start with those. And then maybe some specialized software, I might consider that next. Some general office equipment, printers, scanners, faxes, registers, I might put that next. So kind of think about that in a hierarchy, and each of those different levels can be on one line. So that's the kind of the way that I've organized mine. And then if you speak languages, that is really important, and people are really looking for that today. So if you speak English, Spanish, you know, any other languages you might speak, German, you would want to go ahead and emphasize that there. So we've talked a little bit about your education and how you might have awards not really in with your education. You might have like your GPA or have something about cum laude, like which is how you, the level at which you graduated with honors. It's a title. But you may have a breakaway section for your awards and your achievements. And so this kind of shows you a standard layout for that. So you would start with the award title, and then the awarding organization, and then you would have the year presented. In a room, you can include a short synopsis. So, for example, I got the Robert E. Getz Award when I graduated from UCM, and that was an award that was awarded to outstanding graduate students within the college that year, College of Applied Sciences and Technology. So I could succinctly get that in a sentence and add that if I wanted to. So that would be an example. One thing you want to keep in mind is you don't want to include it into paragraphs. You don't want to get too lengthy. Kind of just want a standalone sentence that kind of explains that. And then some examples on the side there are membership to Beta Phi Mu Honor Society. So if you have memberships to different groups that aren't honors, you could include that under like memberships and affiliations if you wanted to have another section for that. It's not necessary, but in this case, we're talking about you were nominated into an honor society and joined, so that would fit under awards and achievements. Employee of the Month is another good example. If you get a fellowship, this Bourne Fellowship in the year, that's another example. Sarah, would you like to add anything about this section?
I think you've covered it well.
Okay. So once we have everything filled in and we've gone ahead and changed and deleted and moved things around, we'll be ready to go ahead and start wrapping up. So when you wrap up, you'll want to proofread. You want to correct any layout inconsistencies. And another thing you might want to consider doing is once you've saved your resume, share it with people for additional feedback. So share it with family, friends, a teacher, you know, a coworker. Have somebody look it over. They may be able to remind you of something you did on the job you hadn't really thought about that would be an important skill or job bullet to share with a potential employer. And anytime you want to find your work later on, it's going to be on Google Drive. It's automatically saved there. So we've already gone into that document and given it a name. So it will show up right there under Drive. And it would probably even show up at the top under easy access since we had just recently modified it. All right, so congratulations on completing your resume with Google Docs course. I want to open it up to questions at this time or comments. And if you don't have any, that will complete our program for today. So thank you again for joining.
Oh, hi, this is Diane.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, sorry, my connection was really spotty at the beginning of the program.
Uh-huh.
Why are you saying not to include your mailing address?
Oh, okay. So a lot of times that can be looked at, it can be used discriminately, maybe against you. we want to kind of safeguard against discrimination. A potential employer might see that you live far away, and they might think, oh, this person might, end up being late to work, or you just don't want them. It's kind of become out of, it's not trendy anymore to include the address because everybody communicates so much through email and cell phone. It's not as necessary. But if you live close to a job and you kind of want to highlight that, you might want to include it. So I think some pros and cons situations in which you may want to include it, but just in keeping the resume kind of short and to the point, it's just been one of those things that they're starting to do away with.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I think I'm good right now. There's a lot to take in.
Okay. Well, there'll be, I think the PowerPoint is going to be shared somewhere where you can access it, and then you can look at it in your own time. And then the whole program's been recorded too. So if you want to go back and rewatch it, that'll be available too. And I'll give you my email if you want to reach out to me by email. I'll send you an email since I have your information. And if you have any questions in the future about, or you want to work up a draft of your resume or want somebody to look it over, you can let me know, okay?
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I will be posting this to our Trails Regional Library YouTube, and I'll also send out the link for the recording to participants. I'm hoping that we have more programs like this in the future, and really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us, Kelly, and for attending, Diane.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for offering it.
Diane? Yeah.